The natural sounds of announcements and rolling luggage are loud. I'm wearing a backpack and holding a camera on a gorilla pod, pointing it at myself. All right, so, travel. It's this thing we all chase, right? Getting out there, seeing the world, breaking the routine. And for me, the journey itself, the act of getting from point A to point B, that's where the story really lives. So today, we're going to talk about it. We're going to look at the airports that, according to travelers and a ton of data, can be incredibly challenging if you're elderly or need mobility assistance. This isn't about scaring anyone away, it's the opposite. It's about empowering you with information so you can plan smarter and advocate for yourself. Make sure that the journey, the beautiful, messy, incredible journey, is accessible to everyone, no matter their age or mobility. Let's get into it. First up, let's talk about an airport that's practically a legend in New York City for all the wrong reasons. LaGuardia LGA, they've poured billions into making it better. It is getting better. But for years, this place was a masterclass in what not to do. The old terminals were a maze of cramped hallways, low ceilings stuffed into a shoebox with 10,000 people. Imagine trying to navigate that. You get dropped off. The first thing that hits you is a wall of sound. People everywhere. Everyone is in a rush. Now you need a wheelchair assistance. Desks are swamped or not clearly marked. You're told to wait. But this isn't a calm lounge. It's a human river. People bags. It wears you down before security. The problem wasn't aesthetics. It was fundamental design. Terminals built before modern accessibility standards. Retrofitting felt like fitting a square peg in a round hole. Elevators rare and tucked away. Restrooms too small for wheelchairs. Small friction points add up. Getting between terminals was its own ordeal. Landing in one, connecting to another meant a journey. Waiting for a shuttle bus, long waits, crowded conditions, hassle of getting on and off. Distances were fragmented and confusing. It's a gauntlet of stress and physical exertion. The data backs it up. A huge number reported long waits for mobility assistance. We're talking about 70% reporting waits over 30 minutes, many near an hour. Think about that. You request help, and your first experience is being left to wait. Even with new terminals, the old LaGuardia's reputation lingers. Sheer volume stretches resources. Thin more wheelchairs, but demand still outstrips supply at peak times. Staff are overworked, doing their best. LGA is improving, but its history is a powerful lesson. Years of neglect create an environment hostile to those who can't run to their gate. A beautiful new building doesn't fix deep logistical problems. For elderly travelers, the reputation alone can cause anxiety. It was well earned for a long time. All right, let's jump across the pond to London. But we're not talking about Heathrow. We're talking about one of the kings of the low-cost airline world, Stansted, STN. This place is a hub, a massive engine for budget travel across Europe. And that's awesome, right? It makes travel accessible, it opens up the continent. But there's a flip side to the low-cost model, a hidden cost that isn't on your ticket, especially if you need a helping hand. It's baked into the very design and operation of airports like this. Stansted is huge. It's a single, massive terminal, which sounds simple, but it's not. From the main building, you often have to take a transit train out to satellite piers where the gates are. This is where the problem starts. That journey, from check-in to the actual gate, can be incredibly long. A significant walk, then a train ride, then another walk. For someone with limited mobility, it's not just a walk, it's a trek, and it's often a crowded one, filled with people rushing to catch their Ryanair flight, filled with people rushing to catch their EasyJet flight. The whole low-cost carrier model is built on efficiency and speed for the airline. Quick turnarounds are key. This means planes are often parked at the furthest gates, the ones that are cheapest for the airline to use. What's cheap for the airline often translates to what's most inconvenient for the passenger. So, you've made it through the main terminal, You've taken the train, and now you're faced with another long corridor, and your gate is, of course, the very last one at the end. The challenge at Stansted, as reported by many travelers, isn't that assistance doesn't exist, but that it can be incredibly stretched. The assistance counters can be hard to find, tucked away from the main flow of traffic. And because so much of the airport's traffic is funneled through these low-cost carriers, the demand for help can be immense, all concentrated around the peak departure times for those budget flights. You can find yourself waiting, watching the clock tick down, a growing anxiety that you might miss your flight. Here's a stat that puts it all in perspective. A massive 90% of passengers flying from Stansted are using low-cost carriers, which often utilize these more remote gates and have those lightning-fast turnaround times. The entire infrastructure is optimized for this model, and passenger comfort, especially for those needing assistance, can feel like a secondary concern to the operational demands of the airlines. Think about the transfer process. You're not just walking, you're navigating different levels. Escalators, automated train systems. Each one of these is a potential hurdle. An escalator can be daunting. An elevator might be crowded or out of the way. The transit train can be packed with little room to maneuver a wheelchair or even just to stand comfortably if you're unsteady on your feet. It's a series of small challenges that accumulate into one big, stressful journey to the plane. So, while Stansted connects millions of people to amazing destinations for cheap, it's crucial to understand the trade-off. The business model that makes that €20 or so flight to Spain possible is the same one that creates a sprawling, sometimes confusing, and physically demanding airport environment. For an elderly traveler, it means you have to be extra proactive. Book assistance way in advance. Okay, so you see a cheap flight to Paris, you book it. You're excited. Eiffel Tower, croissants, the Louvre. Then you realize you've flown into Paris Beauvais, or BVA. BVA is to Paris what a distant cousin is to your immediate family. It's not just an airport. It's the start of a whole other journey. The first and most jarring reality of BVA is its location. It's about 85 kilometers, or over 50 miles north of Paris. This isn't a quick cab ride. The primary way to get to the city is via a dedicated shuttle bus. This bus ride is its own adventure. It's not a luxury coach. It's a functional, often crowded bus. The journey is long, and depending on traffic, can be unpredictable. Now you have to find the bus ticket counter and wait in line, often in an area with limited seating and exposure to the elements. Then haul your luggage onto the bus and find a seat. It's physically and mentally draining. The opposite of welcoming. The airport is stripped down, a hangar and a runway. Amenities are minimal, no lounges or big staff presence. On-site mobility services are scarce. Requesting a wheelchair isn't guaranteed. You are, to a large extent, on your own. The shuttle issue is the real killer. Distance and time. Average advertised transfer, 75 minutes. But during peak traffic, this can stretch to 2 hours or more. Shuttle transfers from BVA can easily take 2+ hours in traffic. Imagine adding 2 hours in a cramped bus seat to the end of your travel day. For elderly travelers or anyone with mobility issues, that can be pure misery. When you arrive at Port Maillot, you're at a massive bus terminal on the edge of the city. You still have to navigate the Paris metro or hail a taxi in chaos. That cheap flight now has a hidden cost: time, energy, and physical strain. For backpackers, it's an inconvenience. For elderly travelers, it can be a barrier. Look beyond the ticket price. Consider comfort, stress, and well-being. The story of Beauvais is not unique. Let's head to Italy, to the fashion capital of Milan. Or at least, that's what the ticket says. You land at Orio al Serio Airport, Milan Bergamo, BGY. And just like with Beauvais, you quickly realize you're in for another bus ride. Bergamo is a beautiful city in its own right, but it's not Milan. The journey between the two exposes the same challenges for elderly and mobility-impaired travelers. BGY is a massive hub for Ryanair, other low-cost carriers too. The airport sits about 45 kilometers, roughly 28 miles, from central Milan. That adds an hour or more on top of your travel day, usually on a crowded coach. For elderly travelers, fatigue sets in here. The journey keeps adding steps. The airport layout also presents challenges: gate, passport control, baggage claim, bus area. For those steady on their feet, it's manageable. But if you use a cane, have a bad knee, or tire easily, the distance from plane to curb can feel like a final, exhausting lap. The lesson is the same as Beauvais, with an Italian accent. That super cheap flight carries a non-financial cost. It costs you time. It costs you energy. It demands physical stamina. It demands logistical planning. It's a reminder, the final airport code matters. It can mean arriving refreshed or utterly drained. Now let's bring it back to the US. We're going to Texas. Dallas Love Field. DAL. This isn't a remote secondary airport. It's a major domestic hub in the heart of the city. But its setup creates unique challenges for congestion and getting help. Love Field grew explosively in a space not built for that. And that creates friction. Love Field is, for all intents and purposes, Southwest's airport. Gates dominated by Southwest. Flight schedules synced to Southwest. Huge volumes of people moving through the terminal. That creates a specific traffic pattern. Big, synchronized waves. The terminal can go from calm to chaos in minutes. That's where the problem for elderly travelers begins. During peak rushes, the terminal becomes incredibly congested. The check-in areas, the security lines, the gate areas. Navigating this crowd is overwhelming and physically hard. Wheelchairs and walkers must weave through dense, hurried crowds. The sheer density strains everything. Accessibility staff get overwhelmed. You can pre-book assistance, but demand can surge past staff capacity. One assistant may be trying to help 3 people to 3 gates. Staff are often running to keep up. The numbers show the pressure. Departure boards and delays. Peak hour delays can spike up to 45% at DAL. Imagine this. You arrive 2 hours early. Then you hit a rush hour. You wait for a wheelchair. You finally get one. The security line is massive. You clear security. Now the concourse is a wall of people. The assistant is stopped by others asking for help. Stress keeps rising. The environment feels frantic, not calm. The challenge isn't distance or lack of amenities. It's intense, concentrated pulses of activity. A convenient modern airport that can be a victim of its own success. For elderly travelers, timing is everything. Fly midday or late at night for a calmer experience. If you must fly in morning-evening rushes, prepare for high stress and allow a lot more time. We've talked about airports that are too crowded. Now let's talk about the opposite problem. Airports that can feel eerily empty. We're going back to New York, but way upstate, to New York Stewart International, SWF. For a while, Stewart was hyped as the next great international gateway for the region, a low-cost alternative to JFK and Newark. But that dream hasn't fully materialized, and what's left is an airport that presents a very different kind of challenge for elderly travelers. The problem at Stewart isn't crowds. It's a lack of, well, everything. A lack of flights, a lack of airlines, a lack of robust passenger services. When an airport has very limited departures each day, the support infrastructure is scaled down. This includes food concessions. This includes the staff who provide mobility assistance. The airport can feel quiet, and that quiet can be unsettling if there's no one around. Imagine arriving for a flight. The terminal is clean and modern, but very quiet. You look for an information desk or an assistance counter, but it might not be staffed continuously. It might only open a couple hours before the 1 or 2 flights of the day. If you arrive early, you might find yourself waiting in a large, empty hall with no one to ask for help. This can be a source of great anxiety. The staffing issue is the core of the problem. With so few flights, it's not economical to have a large team of wheelchair assistants on standby all day. Staffing is lean and timed to flight schedules. This creates a fragile system. If one flight is delayed and overlaps with another, or if more people than expected request assistance for a single flight, the system can break down. There's no backup, no deep bench of staff to call on. Let's look at the numbers. JFK might have over 1,000 flights a day. Stewart might have fewer than 20 commercial departures a day. Staffing ratios can be as low as one agent for every 500 potential passengers. The few staff available are stretched thin, and you, the passenger, are dependent on that one person being in the right place at the right time. Scarcity extends to equipment. Stewart might have a limited pool of wheelchairs. If arriving passengers haven't returned them, a departing passenger could be out of luck. It's a logistical dance with no room for error. When you need that wheelchair, that's a scary proposition. The paradox: lack of congestion can signal a deeper lack of resources. For a self-sufficient traveler, it can be a dream. No lines, no crowds, but for an elderly traveler, it can be isolating and stressful. The best airport isn't just new or uncongested. It's one with robust, reliable support for every passenger. So, we've looked at specific examples: LaGuardia's historic congestion, Stansted's low-cost maze, Beauvais' remote location. It's the pattern of the secondary, low-cost airport, promising cheap fares and access to amazing places, but they operate on a model that, by its nature, creates barriers for elderly and mobility-impaired travelers. The business model is simple: cut costs everywhere. It starts with location. Airports built far outside a major city where land is cheap. We saw it with Beauvais, Bergamo. That adds a significant, often physically demanding transfer, usually by bus, often not clearly advertised when you buy the ticket. Inside the airport, cost-cutting continues. Terminals feel like warehouses, not grand hubs. Fewer moving walkways, fewer elevators, fewer and less comfortable seats, minimal lounges. The environment is designed for throughput, not comfort. The lean model hits staffing hardest. Passenger assistance is one of the first areas to be leaned on. Airports meet bare minimum accessibility, but rarely go beyond. Wheelchair assistants are minimized and timed to flights. Little redundancy, small disruptions can cause long waits and high stress. The data is clear. Passengers at low-cost airports are up to 50% more likely to report poor assistance. This isn't a knock on staff, it's the system. Not enough people or equipment to provide consistent high service. Airlines amplify the issue. Ryanair's, EasyJet's. Fast turnarounds and remote gates mean longer walks. Strict, confusing baggage rules add anxiety. So the takeaway: ask, what's the hidden cost of that cheap flight? For young travelers, maybe an inconvenience. For elderly travelers, physical exertion, stress, anxiety, and feeling left behind. Be aware. It's the first step to planning a journey that's actually enjoyable. So what's the point of all this? Is it to say that your parents or grandparents shouldn't fly? Absolutely not. Travel is one of the most beautiful things we can do in our lives, at any age. It connects us. It educates us. It keeps us young. But to make it possible and joyful, we have to go into it with our eyes wide open. Understand the system. Spot the flaws. Learn how to navigate it. The responsibility often falls on us to do the research. The solution is planning. Look beyond the ticket price. Which airport am I actually flying into? What are my transfer options? How far is it to the city? Read reviews from travelers with mobility issues. Call the airline weeks in advance. This is about design and empathy. Encourage airports and airlines to think about every passenger, not just the young people who can sprint to a gate. Build systems that are resilient, compassionate, and accessible. A world easier for the elderly and mobility impaired is better for everyone. Keep traveling. Keep exploring. Do it with knowledge. Plan ahead and be prepared. Make the journey as beautiful as the destination. Thanks for watching.